hold on. I gotta roll the windows up. I forgot to do that. All right. I'd like to ruminate freeform style on a particular statement that I heard when I was working the other day. I heard somebody say, in the context, we were talking about evolution and how self-evident it is if you have a brain and know how to use a book and want to know how to use whatever. We were talking along those lines of like, man, creationists are stupid. In those polite couch terms that intelligent people do, because we're intelligent, we don't need to be rude. Just subtly rude. Anyway, so the statement was made, which is sort of very common, a sort of caveat to religion, as if to say, religion obviously has no sphere of influence in science of biology and evolution. It's completely superfluous there. But, oh man, if you look at the world of mathematics, it just reeks of religion. It just smacks of it. It repeatedly calls out for it. Some hyperbole of that sort was what was said. And I found that sort of a non sequitur, which I found it to be a non sequitur because certainly we were not talking about, we weren't talking about religiosity in general. We were talking about creationism being silly. And secondly, I think there is this general tendency for people who are reasonable they want to find a place for religion. They don't want to say, it's all poppycock. It's all absurd. It's all made up. It's your fairy tale. But anyway, that's not the point. The point is, when you do look at mathematics, there is something about it that seems the beauty of mathematics, which is what he was talking about, seems very mysterious, seems very spiritual, if you want to use that word. It seems very transcendent, numinous. What's something he said, why do all equations have to be beautiful? Why do they all have to be harmonious and balanced? I guess I'd like to try to suggest an answer to that has nothing to do with religion. I would say that, first of all, let's not forget what math is. Math is a theoretical science, but it's a science, and it's based on observation. Math is not a pure form distilled in the human mind in some kind of platonic universe. It's something that has been grown up from the simple act of counting how many rocks you have. You know what? I bet they never counted how many fucking rocks they had. They counted how many children they had. Or they counted how many kills they had. Counting rocks. Only a civilized human would count rocks. A caveman doesn't have time for that bullshit. So it's an observed science that grows up from observation into a very theoretical one, and it's in a very abstract place now, but it's all based on observation of reality, and confirmation with reality where applicable. So things like physics apply math to reality in a way that it can be checked. If the math starts to go astray from what the physics is saying is happening, well, it doesn't, but I mean, they check each other. They're constantly there looking at each other. The physics is using the theoretical math, and the math is being applied practically with physics, or certain kinds of physics. So, since math is based on observation, it's not the harmony in our mind that's making the mathematics of it harmonious. It's because the way that things in nature actually do function happens to be that there's not a clutter of basic principles happening. Which is only to say that that the universe is not composed of multitudes and multitudes of principles. Gravity functions in a certain way, and we've found a way of expressing it or expressing its function at least, that's fairly simple and harmonious from a mathematical perspective. You could say that that's a coincidence. You could also just say that that we lucked out and we found a way to describe this principle in a very simple way. I would probably go with the former and say that the principles the way in which the world operates are, in fact, a certain simple set of principles, and our ability to access how those principles function and interact with each other is what makes for the balanced and harmonious nature of mathematics. But the second thing he said was, why do all of these things have to be beautiful? Why do all these mathematical formulas have to be beautiful? They're not beautiful. Nothing is beautiful. Beauty is a product of a human mind. There's no beauty in the world. There's only beauty, to use the coined phrase, in the eye of the beholder. It's only a subject, a mind, that can impose beauty on reality. And this is observable from very mundane aspects all the way up to very obvious ones. There are reasons why we sometimes choose to see things as beautiful or judge things as beautiful that have to do with them being advantageous to us. Sexual beauty is judged by us to be desirable and beautiful because sex was, sexual beauty was a sign of youth and fertility and health and good immune system and things like that. And so those things were good to, in a mate, those things were good to have in a mate. And so therefore we judge them as beautiful. Something being harmonious or simple or pleasant, those things can also be concluded to have been useful to our ancestors in some degree, and so we would naturally select an aesthetic sense that preferred them. Because that aesthetic sense drives our judgments and our actions, indirectly pointing us towards the things that are actually effective for us. Now, this is not to say that all aesthetical judgments are in fact judgments of objective value, because sometimes you just get a crossed wire, sometimes you just have something that is getting exaggerated or it doesn't really serve the purpose it was evolved for, or sometimes you just get quirks of personality. So it's not necessarily the case that everything correlates to an objective good, but there's often does. So some of the things about beauty in the human mind, preferring the aesthetic balance of mathematical relationships, is that understanding these basic principles of, like, say, the zero-sum principle of taking a certain amount of water from one person to give yourself more water, that would be advantageous to understand. That sort of, if I take from you, I get more, you get less. That kind of elegant, simple, beautiful relationship, not the personal relationship. I mean, you're stealing water from this person, so. But the math of it is fairly beautiful and balanced and elegant, and the ability to understand that is obviously very effective. If you want to not thirst to death, you might want to know how to do that. That may not be the best example, but I'm sure you can think of dozens of others where just understanding how parts and wholes combine, how basic meta-mathematical principles apply, could be useful in a primitive primate's mind to their adaptation, or at least something you could at least see how these relationships are concurrent or could develop alongside the abilities that have more practical applications. And I would say that the beauty of mathematics is in the human mind, because the human mind evolved in certain circumstances where those principles were good for them and effective, at least in principle.